There are silences that speak louder than any confession, a glance that lingers just a heartbeat too long, and a smile that seems ordinary, yet carries the weight of unsaid words. Sometimes the world contracts in those moments, and you feel the gravity of something quietly shifting beneath the surface of everyday life. Perhaps you have been there, sensing the subtle change in a person's attention, feeling the quiet pull of presence that is not easily named. It is in these fragile, fleeting moments that human longing makes itself known, not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with the small, almost invisible tremors of attention and care. There is a kind of danger here, not of overt betrayal, but of the heart's quiet awakening in the spaces left empty by routine indifference or the unnoticed voids in another's life. And it is in that quiet danger that we begin to see ourselves reflected in the lives of others in ways both illuminating and perilous. Love, desire, longing. They do not always arrive as fireworks or shouting. They seep in quietly in the pauses between words, in the soft adjustment of tone, in the small details that escape the unobservant eye. A married man once devoted to a life bound by promises and habit may suddenly begin to look at someone differently, not with conscious intent, but with an emotional hunger that has no name. He is not necessarily seeking to hurt nor plotting to betray. He is more often than not seeking to be seen, heard, and understood in a way that he no longer finds at home. And if you are the one who receives this attention, you may feel the subtle magnetism without knowing why it unsettles and excites you simultaneously. It is not scandal. It is a quiet awakening to what human loneliness can look like when mirrored through another's eyes. Carl Jung wrote that what we resist persists, and what we accept transforms. And in that acceptance lies the subtle power of understanding. Desire often blooms not from malice, but from absence, from the empty spaces where recognition, validation, and intimacy have long since faded. When routine erodes the flame of connection, when familiarity dulls the senses, the human heart may reach for resonance elsewhere, often unconsciously, often without malice, but always with consequence. A casual conversation that once felt trivial can become the only moment in a man's day when he feels truly known. A smile, a touch of humor, a pause that invites listening, these become vessels for longing carrying weight far beyond their appearance. You do not need to judge the emotion. You need only to recognize its presence and its potential to shape the lives around it, including your own. The transformation is gradual, almost imperceptible. It begins in tone, in the way his voice softens when he speaks to you, in the subtle warmth threaded through everyday words. A compliment, though casual, carries an emotional resonance that is exclusive, intimate, almost coded. You notice that it is different from the kindness he shows others, that his attention lingers, that he seems attuned to the nuances of your reactions. These small shifts are not accidental. They are the subtle choreography of desire and projection of a man seeking in you what he no longer finds at home. It is not always about attraction in the physical sense. It is about recognition, longing, the need to feel mirrored, valued, acknowledged. And in that reflection, you become more than yourself in his perception. You become the repository of his unspoken needs, a silent companion to his inner life. The danger and the beauty of this is its invisibility. It enters slowly, softly, almost imperceptibly. Messages, questions, small gestures of time and attention, all of them quietly build an emotional architecture that can be intoxicating, confusing, and profoundly human. And yet for the woman who receives this attention, the question always arises, am I merely filling a void that is not mine to fill? Am I being chosen, or am I being leaned upon? The answers are seldom clear, because the human heart is rarely straightforward, and desire rarely arrives without ambiguity. What begins as simple attentiveness may, without conscious choice, become an emotional dependency. And the first step toward clarity is awareness, seeing the signs, feeling them deeply, and knowing that not all connection is sacred simply because it feels intimate. He begins to carve fragments of himself into your presence without words. At first, it is almost imperceptible, a longer look across the room, a softening of his tone when he speaks, a subtle warmth that seems reserved just for you. You feel it before you understand it, a pull in the chest, a flicker of recognition that something is different. You notice that he shares things he once kept close, confessions tucked carefully away from everyone else's, words that reveal a vulnerability unfamiliar outside the walls of his home. Perhaps he tells you about the monotony of his days, the quiet dissatisfaction he masks with routine. Or maybe he speaks of moments that used to feel alive but now pass unnoticed, dreams deferred and conversations never had. And in these small revelations, you realize that you are no longer a casual presence in his world. You have become a sanctuary, a safe place for the parts of himself that have been unseen, unheard, and unacknowledged. There is a peculiar intimacy in this. It is not a matter of touch or physical closeness, but of a presence that lingers in the mind and heart. His messages, his jokes, his stories, they all become an invisible thread connecting your lives in ways that seem innocent, yet carry the weight of longing. Each interaction builds upon the last, layering familiarity and attentiveness like quiet sediment. Over time, you find yourself waiting for his words, anticipating the subtle spark they bring into the otherwise ordinary rhythm of your day. And this is where the line between connection and entanglement begins to blur. He does not speak to you as he speaks to others. His words are careful, charged with a tenderness that is reserved, and the effect is profound. Without intending harm, he is drawing you into a sphere of emotional significance that belongs to no one but him, and now to you as well. It is in the accumulation of these moments that the danger becomes tangible. A compliment, a text, a shared laugh, each one is a brushstroke in a portrait of intimacy that neither began with conscious intent nor asks permission. You may notice the subtle ways he seeks your validation, the almost imperceptible cues that reveal he is measuring your reaction, hoping it will mirror the attention he gives. Perhaps he adjusts the way he presents himself, reshaping aspects of his appearance or mannerisms based on what he knows pleases you. It is a quiet seduction, not of the body but of the heart and mind. And here lies the paradox. This attentiveness can feel intoxicating, almost magical, because it offers exactly what is missing elsewhere in his life. Yet it carries with it the weight of another story, one built on absence, longing, and secrecy. And then the emotional dance intensifies. He begins to ask questions that matter, questions about your thoughts, your feelings, the subtle shifts in your moods. It is no longer about casual conversation. It is about emotional exchange, a sharing of inner worlds that builds an unspoken bridge. In this bridge, the boundaries of propriety begin to waver. You are not just someone he speaks to. You have become the witness to his inner life, the repository of confidences that his partner may no longer receive. You feel honored, yet uneasy, sensing the quiet gravity of the role you have been given. It is a role that feels chosen, but it is not freely offered. It is handed to you in the absence of other outlets, in the spaces where emotional needs have gone unmet, and you start to notice the contradictions. The warmth and attentiveness that once felt effortless now sometimes falter. He may withdraw, suddenly grow distant, or seem unsure of the space he has allowed you to occupy in his life. These shifts are not cruelty. They are the reflection of his inner conflict, the tension between desire and obligation, longing and guilt. The emotional rhythm becomes unpredictable, and with each ebb and flow, you are left questioning not just his intentions, but your own participation in a story that is already entangled. Carl Jung wrote that until we bring the unconscious into consciousness, it directs our lives like fate. And here, in this invisible theater of attention and longing, you are witnessing that truth unfold not as an abstract theory, but as a living, breathing, heart-wrenching experience. Time begins to stretch differently around him. Small moments once unnoticed gain weight, each glance, each message, each shared laugh, creating a rhythm that subtly reshapes your perception of reality. You realize that he is present in your thoughts long after he is gone, that the memory of his voice lingers like a soft echo in your mind. It is not physical closeness that defines this bond, but a presence that has entered the inner chambers of your emotional life. He shares fragments of his day that he does not share with others, the mundane irritations, the quiet triumphs, the little victories that go unseen. And with each confession, the intimacy deepens. You are no longer just listening. You are participating in the architecture of his emotional world. In that participation lies both enchantment and peril. The gestures he makes are subtle, yet they carry intention. He finds reasons to be near you, to extend moments that might otherwise pass unnoticed. Perhaps he lingers just a moment too long when your paths cross, or offers help that seems simple, yet is charged with the desire for presence. It is in these seemingly ordinary choices, the timing of a message, the prolonging of a conversation, the gentle attentiveness to detail, that his emotional investment becomes visible. He is not speaking merely to communicate. He is sculpting a space within your life, a quiet world where his emotional needs can breathe. And you feel it. You feel the gravity of this attention, the pull of being seen in ways that are rare, intimate, and dangerously potent. Yet beneath the allure of connection, there is always the undercurrent of emptiness that catalyzes it. This is not an arrival born of clarity or freedom, but of absence of needs unmet and desires displaced. He is not choosing you in the fullness of a liberated heart. He is seeking something lost elsewhere. And though he may not intend harm, the consequences ripple outward. You are drawn into an orbit of attention that feels nourishing and magnetic, yet is fundamentally provisional. The emotional energy you give is real, profound, and unearned in the context of mutual commitment. In this, there is a subtle injustice. You are invested, yet he is fragmented, divided between the life he maintains and the emotional world he is quietly building with you. Jealousy begins to whisper in the spaces between words, not the overt possessiveness of a lover, but the small revealing gestures of concern, inquiries about who you have been with subtle checks on your attention, a glance that seems to measure the weight of your world against his own. It is a quiet claim, an assertion of presence in a life he cannot fully inhabit, and it speaks volumes about the unconscious dynamics at play. He seeks validation from you because it is missing elsewhere, and in that search, you become a mirror reflecting the parts of him that have gone unacknowledged. You are not just present, you are necessary in ways that feel tender, compelling, and profoundly intimate. And with that necessity comes responsibility, not his, but yours. This is the point where clarity must emerge. The slow accumulation of attention, of intimate disclosure, of emotional investment, each element is beautiful, human, and intoxicating, but it is also laden with risk. You are not simply witnessing affection. You are occupying a space in a life already claimed by another. You are becoming the vessel for needs that should have been met elsewhere. And the moment of recognition arrives quietly. You must ask yourself whether your presence is being chosen freely or whether it exists to compensate for what is absent. You must ask whether the love you are receiving is complete or merely fragments offered from another story. Because the human heart, though endlessly resilient, is not meant to be a refuge for borrowed longing. The subtle contradictions of his attention become a rhythm you cannot ignore. One day he is tender, attentive, almost reverent in the way he communicates. The next, distant, hesitant, as if recoiling from a truth he cannot face. This push and pull is not arbitrary. It is the reflection of a man caught between desire and obligation, longing and guilt, who does not yet know how to reconcile the life he inhabits with the life he momentarily envisions with you. And in this tension, you find yourself walking a delicate line between enchantment and unease. The emotional closeness feels real, magnetic, and even sacred at times, yet it carries an invisible weight, the knowledge that this intimacy exists in borrowed time on borrowed space within a life that belongs elsewhere. You begin to notice how much of himself he invests in these moments with you, not in words alone, but in time. The hours he spends writing, calling, sharing details of his day, the laughter, the jokes, the memes, these are small acts of devotion, gestures of priority. And you feel the quiet pull of importance, the intoxicating knowledge that in a fragmented world, you are the center of someone's focus. But time, when divided from integrity, carries its own subtle cruelty. Each minute given in secrecy, each message sent in stolen hours accumulates into an emotional ledger you did not ask to balance. His attention becomes addictive, not because it is malicious, but because it awakens in you the longing to be fully seen, fully known, and fully valued, longings that are profoundly human and therefore vulnerable to misuse. And yet the heart does not distinguish easily between fullness and absence. You may find yourself waiting for his messages, savoring the warmth in his words, anticipating the spark of attention that once seemed accidental but now feels intentional. Emotional intimacy in this context becomes both a sanctuary and a trap. You listen, you respond, you care, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to weave him into the patterns of your own emotional life. The bond deepens, the invisible tether strengthens, and you realize that even without physical contact, you are profoundly involved. The intensity is gentle, patient, and persistent, wrapping around you like a soft, unbreakable cord. There is a sweetness in this closeness, but it is not innocent. He confides, he laughs, he teases, and with each exchange, he hands you pieces of a life that is not fully yours. In doing so, he creates a parallel intimacy, a sacredness that exists outside the boundaries of his commitment. He may tell you he has never shared these thoughts with anyone before, that he feels different with you, that your presence is a refuge for emotions he cannot voice elsewhere. And all of this is true in its own way. It is a genuine expression of vulnerability, but it is also a subtle projection. You are no longer just a companion. You have become the keeper of another's unmet needs, the mirror in which he sees the parts of himself that have gone unseen. And here lies the quiet peril. You are drawn not to the fullness of a person who is free to choose, but to the fragments of someone seeking escape. The attention feels like love, but it is shaped by absence and longing, not by integrity or openness. You are caught in a delicate paradox. The very emotional depth that enthralls you is the same depth that carries risk. It is intoxicating, yes, but it is also provisional, contingent, and laden with the consequences of a life that cannot fully inhabit the space you share. And so, you are left with questions that cannot be answered by charm, warmth, or tenderness alone. Are you being chosen, or are you filling a void? Is this intimacy a gift, or is it a displacement? Is what you feel true, or is it borrowed longing, clothed in beauty? And then comes the most unsettling phase, ambiguity. It arrives like a shadow at the edge of a sunlit room, a sudden chill in what once felt warm. One moment, he is fully present, tender, attentive, his words carrying the quiet weight of someone who has entrusted you with parts of his soul. The next, he pulls away, retreats, as if the closeness itself frightens him. He acts as though the connection never existed, or perhaps as though it should never have existed at all. You are left suspended between warmth and absence, certainty and doubt, admiration and unease. This is not cruelty, and it is not caprice. It is the reflection of a man wrestling with guilt, fear, and the truth of his own longing, a truth he cannot reconcile with the life he is already committed to. It is here in this dance of approach and withdrawal that the human heart is tested. You feel the pull, the ache of attention that seems to belong wholly to you, yet is never fully yours. You recognize the subtle signs time given in secret emotional vulnerability, the longing for validation, but they arrive in fragments, never whole, never steady. And in these fragments lies the profound lesson: desire without integrity, intimacy without freedom, attention without choice. These are not gifts. They are illusions that can wound disguised as tenderness. They teach you about human complexity, yes, but they also demand that you confront your own boundaries, your own capacity to distinguish between what feels enchanting and what is nourishing. At this point, the question is no longer about him. It is about you, about the space you allow yourself to inhabit within another's incomplete life, about the choices you make when faced with emotional allure that exists in borrowed time. You must ask yourself whether you are being invited to participate in something real, or whether you are filling a vacuum that is not yours to occupy. Are you receiving love or just echoes of absence? Are you building a shared life or feeding a story that cannot be sustained? These are the questions that demand reflection, courage, and honesty. Because the true measure of intimacy is not how much you are seen, but whether that visibility is given freely, with integrity, without compromise to truth. There is a quiet power in seeing these dynamics clearly. To recognize the signals, to honor your own emotional integrity, to choose your own path, this is not judgment, and it is not shame. It is self-preservation, self-respect, and the cultivation of a love that is whole rather than fragmentary. You learn that attention is not always love, that desire can exist without commitment, and that the human heart, though resilient, deserves truth. You begin to understand that to be chosen in fullness is not about charm or words or stolen moments, but about being valued without division, without compromise, without the shadow of someone else's emptiness. And in this realization, a transformation occurs. You are no longer a passive participant in another's unhealed longing. You begin to inhabit your own emotional life with clarity. You see that the beauty of connection lies not in the intensity of borrowed attention, but in the freedom to be fully present with someone who is equally unencumbered. Desire and attention, when untangled from absence and projection, become gifts of mutual presence rather than fragments of escape. And in the quiet strength of this awareness, you reclaim your heart, your time, and your story. And so the final lesson arrives, not as a revelation shouted in clarity, but as a gentle unfolding, a quiet illumination of what it means to be seen, chosen, and loved with integrity. You come to understand that the most alluring connection is not the one that steals your breath in stolen moments, but the one that meets you in wholeness, without fear, without secrecy, without the need to borrow fragments from another life. You learn that emotional attention, when given from emptiness, can feel intoxicating and necessary, but it is not love. It is a reflection of absence, an echo of what someone cannot give to their own world. In recognizing this, you step into a space of profound self-respect. The understanding that you deserve love in its fullness, not in fragments, not as an escape, but as a choice freely made by someone unburdened by divided loyalty. The weight of this realization is both tender and liberating. You recognize the subtle magic in human connection, the beauty in the capacity to feel deeply, to resonate with another's inner life. And yet you also recognize its fragility, its potential to wound when misaligned with truth. There is power in awareness, in the ability to perceive the difference between genuine intimacy and borrowed attention. You see how easily hearts can intertwine without consent, how an emotional bond can take root in the soil of unmet needs, and how difficult it is to extricate oneself once invested. And in this seeing, you reclaim your agency. You understand that attraction does not necessitate action, that feeling is not obligation, that tenderness is not ownership. You choose instead to honor your own story, to preserve your own emotional integrity, to remain whole even when confronted with a connection that feels urgent, compelling, and inexplicably beautiful. It is here in this awareness that you begin to perceive the subtleties of human longing with clarity. You recognize that a man who reshapes his words, his time, his attention around you, is doing more than speaking. He is projecting desires and unmet needs, seeking in you what has been lost elsewhere. You see the tenderness and the danger intertwined, the sweetness and the peril inextricably linked. And in seeing it, you are gifted a rare choice to participate knowingly, to step back with grace, or to hold firm in the knowledge that your heart is not meant to fill voids that belong to another. This discernment is the crucible of emotional maturity, the quiet power of conscious love. And then at last, a final clarity emerges. Love in its truest form is never fragmented, never borrowed, never hidden. It does not rely on secrecy-stolen moments or the absence of another's presence. It arrives whole, free, and unburdened, asking for nothing but mutual recognition and shared integrity. You understand that the true measure of connection is not intensity alone, but honesty, availability, and the freedom to choose one another without shadows, without guilt, without compromise to what is sacred. And you carry this understanding forward as both armor and compass, guiding your choices, your presence, and your willingness to inhabit relationships where you are not an escape, but a destination. In the quiet reflection of this truth, you realize that you have been gifted more than a lesson. In human longing, you have been shown the value of your own heart. You have learned to distinguish between desire that illuminates and desire that wounds, between attention that nurtures and attention that exploits, between intimacy that grows and intimacy that borrows. And in that understanding, a profound freedom emerges, the freedom to seek love that arrives whole, the courage to step away from what is borrowed, and the wisdom to hold your own heart with reverence, even when the world tempts you otherwise. If this reflection resonated with you, take a moment to honor it. Like, share, subscribe, and comment your own experiences below. Every insight, every story, every voice helps us navigate the complexities of the heart together. Love, fully choose consciously, and honor the sanctity of your own soul.